Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. My name is Connor Williams, joined by Paul McAllister, and today we're talking about the points deductions. First things first, Paul, give me your thoughts and feelings. I know it's been about 4 days because the news broke on Friday. How are you feeling so far?
Uh, not angry. That's not the right word because I mean I'm upset that it's happened, but I'm not like rageful like a lot of fans are. I think that's just a waste of your own energy, to be honest, because I kind of half expected something like this to come down the pipe for us. It's more just kind of disillusioned, I think is a good way to describe how I'm feeling. Disillusioned with football in general, disillusioned with the Premier League, just disillusioned with the sport because it it if ever you need a proof that this is this is not really a sporting contest where the winners and losers are decided by what happens on the pitch. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just becoming more and more like a reality TV program that's written by a bunch of people in a room somewhere. They're deciding the outcomes rather than just leaving it to chance. So I'm just very, very disillusioned, mate. It gives me the feeling even more so of kind of, why do I waste my energy on this? Why should I emotionally emotionally invest in football and in Everton when it just kind of feels like the ceiling has been put on top of us, and it's been put on top of us not through any fault of our own, just by people in a boardroom somewhere who just don't want to see Everton succeed, really.
We'll get into the legal case in a minute and all the stuff surrounding their decision and stuff. Um, for what it is right now, though, the 10 points deduction. How are you feeling about where that leaves us in terms of relegation this season? Do you still, a lot of people are still think we'll come out of it okay? Is that a thought that you also
I'm
sentiment?
not confident. I'm not really confident of that because we're only an injury crisis away from having to put João Virginia in goal or Michael Keane in at centre back or Beto, who is a very unproven player up front for a prolonged spell of time. And I think if any of that happens, especially the first two, we have to play 10 games plus with our second choice goalkeeper or with a centre half who's been consistently terrible for us for about 5, 6 seasons, then I don't see us winning many football matches. And if you don't win many football matches, we're not going to get back out of the bottom three. So 10 points off us takes us down to 4 points. We were on 14. The way things were going, I would have been quite confident that we were going to get to 40 points this season, probably 45 plus. With that 10-point deduction now, I'm confident we're going to get to 30 plus points, probably still, but I don't think we're going to get to 40. And it all just depends on what the other bottom three teams get. The last couple of years, 36 points, I think, has been enough to get you safe. What was it last season? 30, was it 36 we finished on? And Leicester
Yeah.
finished on 34. So 36 was enough the last couple of seasons. But I think it could be slightly lower this time. It could be 33, 34, whereas the bottom three all finish on, 31 maximum. But you can't be sure of that. How do we know Burnley are not going to pick up some form? How do we know Sheffield are not going to scab a couple of wins somewhere? How do we know that Luton are just not going to be able to do what a lot of teams who have limited players like them, a lot of championship standard players are able to do, which is just grind away draws. And before you know it, we're in February, March, and they've got more points than you possibly thought you were going to get. So I'm not absolutely bricking it that we're going to go down because of this, but I'm not at all confident that we're going to just suddenly still be all right. I think we are 100% if we stay up with this 10-point deduction. We're only going to stay up by finishing fourth from bottom, not more than that.
Out of curiosity, obviously there is the appeal, which we will also get into. If it changed and they offered the transfer ban, which is rumored to be potentially on the cards instead, do you think transfer ban for the next season is
No, no,
you,
no, because this squad in itself still has massive work to do. It's better than it was last year. Kevin Felwell and Dyche were able to get a couple of good deals done in the summer. But with a transfer ban, that means we're not going to be able to make Jack Harrison's transfer permanent if we decided that we did want to do that, if he has a blinded season. Calvert-Lewin could get injured again long term at some point this year, and that means we can't bring in another striker if Beto doesn't work out as a good alternative. If I don't know, if a club comes and offers us, something that we can't turn down for the likes of Jordan Pickford or for the likes of Jared Branthwaite, offers us a fee that you think we just have to take that for the long term health of the club, we won't be able to buy a replacement for them at a cut down, even at a knockdown price. So no, I wouldn't take a transfer ban because I think that just prolongs the problem. We are still not in a position as a football squad, first team squad, to be able to just not even have the option to replace any players for the next 12 months, however long the transfer ban lasts for. So no, I don't think that a transfer ban is a suitable alternative to instead of getting a point deduction. I think that hurts us just as badly.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, with the 10 points, we're only an injury or two away from being in trouble anyway. So transfer ban would just prolong that. And like you said, it's 10 points for this season, but the transfer ban would probably be you miss like if it's like a year from now, you missed like 3 windows, don't you? You missed the potentially two, but you missed the summer, don't you, in the January, which is even more of a kicker. We'll get onto the legal case. What did you think of some of the reports coming out about the legal case? Obviously, no sporting advantage. It says no sporting advantage was gained. What did you think of some of the mitigating circumstances Everton had put forward? And because some of them I think were fair, but I do think the one where it was sort of alluding to us having no midfield was pushing the luck a little bit.
Well, I haven't read the report, from front page to back page. I've only seen, the condensed versions explained, like a lot of other fans have, by, helpful people who have read the report and decided to summarise it for everybody, the layman. But it just kind of feels overall that Everton were caught kind of banged to rights, and what we've done, it's just the punishment in itself is in far in excess of what's deserved. I can't understand why this commission, whoever they are, the one that's made up of a Leeds fan and a former West Ham employee who's got a career of doing very dodgy things himself, I can't see how they can specifically write in their report that Everton didn't gain nor seek a sporting advantage, yet impose a sporting sanction. That just makes no sense at all. How can you put someone in prison when they haven't committed a criminal offence? Putting someone in prison is a punishment for a criminal act. You haven't committed a criminal act, then you don't deserve a criminal sentence, really, do you? So I don't see how you can punish someone sporting wise when they haven't committed any sort of offence that impacted them on the pitch in terms of sporting advantage. So it's a kangaroo court, and I don't think this appeal that is getting talked about is going to go anywhere. You're basically pissing in the wind trying to reason with these people. They made their minds up weeks ago, if not months ago. The Premier League were leaking out to favoured journalists what they wanted to see happen to Everton, which is just a complete lack. What's the phrase I'm looking for? Breach. Help me out here, Connor. What's the phrase? The Premier League leaking out all this, what they want to see happen to Everton, that we were going to get a 12-point deduction. That's what should happen if they find against Everton. That shows how much integrity they don't have. It's a complete dereliction of duty. It's supposed to say it's to stay confidential, and clearly they didn't want it to stay confidential, because I'm sure there's very, very few people at the top of the Premier League hierarchy, whether it's Richard Masters or Richard Masters' deputy, who had direct access to these commission people who were telling them, putting forward the Premier League's case. It was probably just a handful of people, the chief executive and maybe their solicitor. So it's a kangaroo court. Everton definitely did breach the rules, but for me, if the rules are a load of bollocks and a load of crap in the first place, then that's would be what's getting focused on. FFP isn't anything except trying to protect clubs who are at the top, who've had success historically, the likes of your Manchester Uniteds, your Liverpools, your Arsenals. They've won league titles in multiple decades. They've got European Cups. They're consistently finishing in the top four and getting in the Champions League and the likes of that. FFP is designed to keep them at the top and to stop any other clubs who've got ambition, who want to break into that sort of elite, get forced their way to sit at that table. Your Evertons, your Newcastles, etc. It's a way to keep those clubs down, as far as I'm concerned. And they try and hide behind this. It's to stop clubs going out of business. It's to stop what happened to Portsmouth and to QPR and to stop what happened to Bury. FFP isn't totally evil. It has done some good things, but for me, it's not fit for purpose. The damage FFP does in terms of creating an unfair environment for all clubs to operate in far exceeds the goodness it does in stopping clubs from getting themselves in trouble. At the end of the day, I mean, it will never happen. But in my ideal world, if you want to stop teams from spending too much money and getting themselves, in dire financial straits, you can solve that by putting a salary cap in place, or by introducing what the Germans have got, which is a 50+1 model, or doing what the Dutch do in Holland in Dutch football. The Dutch FA has access to every top flight club's, the Eredivisie, I think they have access to all those clubs' bank accounts, so they know where all clubs stand on financially. They know if a club in Holland wants to do a deal, a transfer, then the Dutch FA have the power to veto it and say, no, we've seen your books. We've seen that you can't afford this deal. We've seen if you spend X amount on this player and you lose X amount in the next calendar year, then you're just leaving yourselves, completely at the mercy of the banks, basically. So we're not going to do that deal because we don't believe you're operating in your own long-term financial interest. You could do anything like that. There's lots of different solutions, but the current model, the profits and sustainability, you can't lose 105 million over a 3-year period. It's just a load of crap. So many clubs have done that over the last 20 years and have borne the fruits of it. Chelsea are a big example. City are a big example. They're clubs that were allowed to invest heavily and they reap the rewards of it sporting wise. They won trophies, they got the best players, they got the best managers. And to suddenly stop other clubs that want to do the same, it just reeks of we're going to pull the drawbridge up behind us.
Yeah, I agree. It's coincidental you mentioned obviously how they do it in Holland, because that's a lot of transparency, which reportedly we showed to the Premier League we obviously communicated to them when we were close to breaching. And we were only 20 million over, which in modern football it wouldn't even buy you a good football player nowadays. It'd buy you probably a bang average English one. But we were transparent with them, and apparently the Premier League signed off. When we're making transfers, they were like, "Yeah, you can have the go ahead for that." So for this to come back and bite us almost seems like I don't want to say we were misled up a dangerous path, but it doesn't seem to sit right that you hear in one minute that there's total transparency between the club and the league, and then
it's the authorities making the rules up as they go along, changing the rules when to suit themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, also I think one of the mitigating circumstances which was brushed out is obviously the war in Europe with the Ukraine and Russia, which I feel like that was one of the ones that we put forward that I think you could genuinely understand from Everton's point of view. Like we weren't to know that Russia were going to invade, and we weren't to know that Uzmanov was a massive fan of Putin and therefore was going to get Russian and get sanctioned, sort of thing. So for him to say that it's not a good enough mitigating circumstance shocked me as well when I was reading the report.
Well, that's not the only money that we claim to have missed out on. There was player X. I'm not going to say his name, but everyone knows who he is. Player X, who basically got arrested in the summer of 2021, I think it was now, and basically he was sacked by the club essentially. And the club club says that they were planning to sell him, and they expected to make X amount of money from selling him to another club, and that would have gone in the coffers, and that would have helped. Whether it would have been 20 million, 30 million, whatever, that would have kept us above the threshold. The money we lost out on by not being able to sell this player, and we couldn't sell him. In our arguments, the reason we couldn't sell him was purely because he was arrested, and no club would go near him because of that. And we claimed we could have sued that player for loss of earnings, but chose not to sue him because we didn't want to impact his mental health. Now, I think that's a very admirable thing to do from a club. If it's just, think of the headlines. Big, powerful football club goes after one individual football player when he's not been found guilty of anything. I don't even think he was charged with anything. It was just a big, long investigation that ultimately got quietly dropped. So think of it, a big, powerful entity like a Premier League football club sues one individual for something that they haven't even been charged with to get money back off them. It would have been terrible optics-wise, wouldn't it? It would have made the club look awful from a moral standpoint, but legally, the club probably had a sound footing and could have got to court and won, but we chose not to. So even trying to do something that was morally right like that has got the club no credit at all. So it just shows you that this Premier League are not interested in, doing the right thing. They're just interested in getting the result they wanted, which was to make Everton suffer, basically, from on the sporting wise.
Yeah, you mentioned the making up the rules as well, and there's a report that Paddy Boylan's done in the Athletic saying about the 10-point deduction, and the Athletic have since been said that the sanction framework, was only meant to be used in Everton's case. It's understood it's not no such league-wide sanction policy. It's a pipeline at the moment that would change depending on the communication between the clubs. So people saying, the 10-point deduction, oh, City will get this, City will get that. I feel like they've set a benchmark for themselves, but they very clearly are now telling the press that they're not setting a benchmark.
Yeah. Basically, what they're saying is, if we wanted to, we could find City guilty on all charges and only fine them £100,000 with no points. Just because we've done this with Everton doesn't mean that's now, our official line of, for every charge you're found guilty of, you get 10 points. So if you're guilty of 10 charges, you lose 100 points. That's not what they're doing now, which is what you think they would be doing. Now that they've done this to Everton, you think they'd be putting it in writing that this is automatically what happens if you're found guilty. They're turning around and basically saying, no, we'll just decide whatever punishment we want to impose when depending on what mood we're in that day. Essentially, we can just decide the punishment on a whim, and it doesn't have to be written down anywhere. It doesn't have to be agreed upon. It doesn't have to be voted for as unanimously by all the clubs in the league as something that they all signed up to. No, it's just basically someone, again, in an ivory tower will just decide what punishment they want to impose on this club that's found guilty, and it'll probably just decide on what end of the bed that person woke up in that day. He could, if it's a Monday, he could decide to impose a 20-point ban. If it's a Tuesday and he had a good breakfast, he could just decide to impose a £50,000 fine. It's a load of nonsense. It is just, again, making it up as they go along.
Which was cemented in the punishment. Apparently, when reading, it was like 5 million was the sanction for breaking the FFP. And then the Premier League had told the club, who supposedly didn't know this, that it's then I think it's 2 points deducted per 5 million you're over, which took us to the magic 10 or like.
No, it adds up to 9. That was what Richard Masters put forward. Richard Masters put forward to this commission that this is the sanction the Premier League think should be imposed on any club that is found guilty. 5 points for every charge that you're found guilty of, and I think it was 1 point for every 5 million you're over. So Everton lost 19 million, wasn't it? So 5 points for the charges, and then for 19 million, that's 4 points. I think it is. So it adds up to 9, which again just shows you how they arrived at 10. Then do you know how they broke it down to think Everton 10 is the optimal number for Everton? There is no methods that they've worked out. They've literally just decided it. They've thought it up in their head. I just thought, yeah, that sounds reasonable. We'll apply that.
It's absolutely boggling. We've also got now the more worrying, obviously the independent commission found in favour of it. But they're also now apparently head of the panel for the clubs that want to try and sue Everton.
Yeah.
Which surely, bearing in mind, like you said, one of them has got links with Leeds United, and they are one of the clubs
that is trying to get compensation out of Everton.
Yeah, it just stinks. Like well and truly just stinks. But I also, I mean, I don't know about you, Paul, but when I was reading it, I was worried at first. I mean, I am still worried because it's the Premier League and it's the independent commission who've done us no favors either. But part of me was like, surely the fact that we've been found to have not gained a sporting advantage would mean that these don't really have a leg to stand on, because there's about 4 clubs.
When it comes to the Premier League and this commission, there's no such thing as surely they wouldn't do this, or surely this wouldn't be allowed. We've seen that they'll do anything that they feel they can get away with. Because if you want to apply logic, then Everton wouldn't have been docked any points at all. For the simple fact of we were found not to have gained or sought a sporting advantage. So there's no such thing as surely. The only way this gets overturned or stopped in its tracks is if it gets pushed through Parliament that an independent regulator has to come in immediately, and an independent regulator will then overhaul everything and say, no, you're not just going to mark your own homework. We're not going to let you act like English football is the Wild West. Take all the power out of these corrupt people's hands and do it fairly. You'd hope. I think an independent regulator is the only possible solution. I don't think an independent regulator would be perfect because that's imposed by the government, and governments change, don't they? People in the Department of Culture, Sport and Media, they come and go. They're always dependent on whoever's sits at the top of that tree. But it would be a damn sight better, I think, than what we've currently got, which is just a cowboy court.
Well, coincidentally, I mean, it's not quite the regulator. I mean, there is mention of it, but obviously Ian Burns wrote a letter, a motion condemning the unjust points deduction, and he's called for the independent football regulator. I think it's something Gary Neville in the past has also been in favour of. Whether this goes anywhere is another thing. But it does seem to have hit Parliament slightly. There's more and more MPs every time I check that are in support. But ultimately it could just fall flat on its face.
The King Charles mentioned it in that speech he gave the other week, and that speech that he gives is a speech that's written for him by the government for anyone who doesn't keep up on these things. So basically, the government have basically already alluded to the fact through that speech that King Charles gave a few weeks ago that they are planning to introduce a football regulator. They just didn't mention any specifics of when it's coming in or how it's going to come in or kind of what people can expect. But it seems very clear that the government Parliament is in favour of an independent regulator. It's just after this has happened, Ian Baird and other MPs and the Mayor, Steve Rotherham, good on them all. They're trying to force the issue now by putting all these letters into Parliament and being so vocal about it. They're trying to basically say, yeah, okay, a football regulator, you've said you want, they're saying to everyone else in Parliament, you've said you want this to happen, you said it's the right thing, well, here's living proof of we need this right now. There can't be any dilly-dallying. We have to get this independent regulator pushed through immediately because look at what the current authorities are doing to a football club that isn't anywhere near as guilty as they're trying to make out like they are. So I think that's all Everton's only hope. I don't think this appeal to this commission or whoever they are, this cowboy court, it's not going to go anywhere. The only way Everton get those 10 points back or any points back is if the football regulator comes in quite quickly. And we just have to hope that they can force that through in Parliament.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. I do agree with you. I don't think the appeal is I think it's gonna fall on deaf ears. I don't know why. I just can't see them overturning it when similar powers that be have sanctioned it. I don't see it working very well.
It's like VAR, hardly. If to sum it all up, after the referees give a penalty and it's blatantly not a penalty, the guy in Stockley Park is not going to overrule his mate, is he?
No,
They've already Mike Dean, the silly bastard, has already said it out loud, hasn't he? In that interview he did a few months ago, but he admitted that he was not going to overturn his mate when he was another referee when he was working on VAR. So it's the same applies with this commission in the Premier League. They're not going to overrule what's already been put there because they're not going to make themselves look stupid, no matter how wrong it is morally.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, there is worth pointing out as well to people, and we're not going to go into detail because, like we said, we don't want to give them the clout, but there is a lot of not misinformation, but a lot of scaremongering going on as well at the minute. I think with the news, you've got to be really careful which bits you read.
There's a few dickheads who write for rags like the Daily Mail who just seemingly sit there all day thinking of what stuff they can write up and post to annoy Everton fans, even though it's absolutely absurd. I'm not going to say his name, but everyone knows who it is. But as he's got a little crappy neck beard and he's ugly as anything. So if you know who I'm alluding to, don't click on his articles when it gets posted out. Just block the fella. He's not worth your headspace, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and nothing he says ever comes to fruition. So just completely ignore him. And I think there's a few other journalists who've written pieces over the last couple of days who I don't think have necessarily got it in for the club like that other piece of shit has. I think they've just wrote pieces that are really ill-informed, like saying Everton, spent big under this manager during this period of time. When if you look at the facts in the cold light of day, that's not what happened. Everton did not, go on a spending spree under Frank Lampard in early 2022. That's just rubbish. I don't know where you're getting your information from, but it's matter of public record that we finished those transfer windows in the black, not the red. We made more money through selling other players than we did actually spending on their replacements. So there's a few other journalists who put out crap stuff, but I don't have a problem with them. I think it's just some lazy journalism from them, whereas there's one or two who are just, as far as I'm concerned, piece of shit who've got it in for the club, who just live to wind up the fans.
Yeah, I agree. I often think not just about this in the last year or so. I often think we're a very good, almost very good audience to because it's all about engagements and interactions now, and I think we are a good club to wind up for interactions and engagements. So I do find that some journalists are baiting fans a little bit more because they know they'll come out to defend the club. Which more power to them, but I think it's what the journalists ultimately want from certain media outlets. Speaking of the fans, though, the 1878s have had a GoFundMe. I don't know the number off the top of my head now, but it's well in its 20Ks, I think now, surely.
It's more
Um,
than that. I think
more than
it's
that.
in the tens of, yeah. I think it's if it past 50,000 now, or very close to past 50,000, which was the target.
Wow, incredible. I was going to say it shot up really quickly. Um, there are other there are planned protests as well that they've tweeted about today. I think they've got the banner, like they said, there's banners coming in. I've seen a few of the banners and stuff like that. Just give me your thoughts on the fan response, the plans for Goodison.
I understand it. Fans feel helpless and they want to feel like they're doing something to make a difference to, fight the club's corner. I'm not going to go to the game against Manchester United on Sunday. I've got a ticket for it, but I've given it away to someone who is more bang up for it than I am. My feeling goes back to what I said at the beginning. I'm more than anything, I'm just kind of disillusioned. I don't really want to be going to watch any football match because it's the same reason I don't watch reality TV. It's the same reason I don't watch WWE. Same reason I don't watch um, you know many sitcoms. I don't like watching scripted television a lot of the time because for me, I don't want to watch something that I know the outcome has already been decided by someone sat in a room somewhere who thinks that they're dead clever. So I'm not going to go watch Everton versus United because even though I could do, I've given the ticket away to somebody who's going to enjoy it more than I will. All the banners and stuff, fans have got their hearts in the right place, but do I think it's going to make a great deal of difference? No, I don't personally. Sky probably won't even show, the most inflammatory banners on the TV. They'll show one or two that are a bit harmless, the ones that say "Dogs of War" and "We are Everton," and they'll flash them up, but they're not going to show any that point that have like Premier League corrupt on it or you can't punish certain fans. That's another one I've seen, which alludes to the fact that certain clubs tried to destroy English football as we know it and got away with a paltry little fine, 22 million between the six of them. Nonsense, but yeah, I won't be going on Sunday. Fair play to all the fans who are donating and are trying to be as loud and proud as they can, but I'm kind of not in that headspace myself. I'm kind of just at the point where I want to think as less about it as possible because for me, the enthusiasm for the sport's nearly been totally zapped away.
Yeah, I unfortunately I completely agree. I think it's brilliant response by the fans, and like always, the heart's in the right place. But do I think in the wider area it'll have much effect? I think the Premier, like you said, Sky won't show it because it's the Premier League and their partners. And I think ultimately the Premier League, it won't change anybody's mind there. If anything, they're just going to double down, which they were never going to change their mind anyway. But now they're just going to double down with, I think, a nasty bit of venom in them because it's hurt their egos a little bit. But I can't see them changing it, like we said, which is unfortunate. Like we said, I think the best hope is independent regulator as soon as possible.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. And for anyone who does go on the Sunday, and you want to be loud and proud, then all power to you. You've got more enthusiasm and more heart than I have. The only thing I suggest is don't do anything stupid that's going to paint the club in a negative light. Don't run on the pitch or anything like that. Don't threaten anybody. Don't send messages to anyone who works the Premier League if you manage to get their personal information, anything like that. All that can stop because that's not going to help the club and it's not going to help the light that the fan base is going to anyway going to get try and painted in because the media who are in with the Premier League, the likes of Sky, are going to try and portray the fans as thugs and nasty and unrealistic, and they're losing their heads because they're getting punishment they deserve. That's the narrative that's going to be spun in a lot of places. So don't give them any fuel for that. Just be loud, be proud, but be peaceful and be sensible.
Yeah, and no throwing stuff on the pitch either. I've seen a few people mention it. Don't
No,
throw anything on the pitch.
yeah, none of that. No flares either. I understand a lot of people who take flares do it because they think it helps the atmosphere, but flares are banned. Flares can be very dangerous. There's people who are sat around here who might be kids who might have asthma. No flares, please. No, and as I said before, if you get no going to outside like Richard Masters' office or something like that, or if you get the address of somebody who you think is involved in this decision, no going to theirs and protesting outside their house. That solves nothing. We see a lot of that in politics where people get MPs, local, personal information and try and use it against them to impact their direct lives. You're just making situations worse when you do that. So please don't break the law or anything like that, even if your heart's in the right place because you love the club.
Completely agree, mate. That is all we've got time for, though. Paul, thank you for joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Pleasure to speak to you, mate. Just not what the topic we have to speak about, but
yeah, unfortunately, the topics are so good. Don't forget, guys, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and leave your thoughts on all of this down below. I'm sure there'll be some very interesting reads, and we'll see you soon.